Leaving Punton Bay, the first stop was the old World War II plane wrecks just outside Bamaga. We then hit the road and it wasn't long before we were back at the Jardine ferry. So here's a hot tip about the Jardine ferry. So at lunchtime, I think it's from 12 till 1, I'm not entirely sure, but definitely lunchtime, it shuts down for an hour. So then what happens is all the traffic builds up either side, and because if you've got a couple of caravans, you're only going to get 2 on at a time. So you can get quite busy at that point waiting for a ferry. So plan your day around that ferry and avoid the lunchtime. So we continued on our journey south, heading towards Chile Beach with an overnight at Moreton Telegraph Station. You can't pre-book Moreton Telegraph Station, but there is plenty of room there. Can't remember exactly how much the camping was, but from memory it was about $20 per person per night. Driving time from Punton Bay took about 5.5 hours over the 274 kilometres. So you often hear about the easy way to Cape York or the hard way, and the easy way being the PDR and Bamaga Road, and then the hard way being the old telegraph track. There is no easy way to the Cape. Even the easy way on the road is not easy because of the corrugations. The corrugations are just unreal. So the corrugations reshaped my saucepan. So the saucepan lives in the front runner, just usually in there with all the other saucepans. Food bag on top, so there's no real weight on top. This is what the corrugations I've done to my saucepan. So there's a couple of theories between the group, and what we think might have happened was that the resonant frequency of this material seemed to be generated by the corrugations, and it's just distorted it, because it's definitely not been done by weight. So that's what corrugations can do to, it's probably 5 or 6 mil thick aluminium, yeah, and it's distorted it like that. So dealing with the corrugations was all about selecting the right tyre pressure and the right speed. What I found best for this car was about 20 psi, and then the next thing was getting the speed right. You often see people driving too slowly. You actually need to drive quite fast over corrugations. If you go too slow, you pick up every sort of corrugation and you get rattled to bits, and then you have to speed through that, and then you tend to float over the top. So for this car, we were looking at, and those types of corrugations, somewhere between about 65 k's and up to about 80 k's an hour, and then you just float over the top.
Right, accelerate a little bit more.
What speed you're there? They're flying over the top now.
Go to like, yeah.
It's much better.
Keep it at speed. What speed is it?
It's that sweet spot between 65 and 70. We just sort of skip over the top of the corrugations. So 20 psi, that was actually reasonably comfortable, but I wasn't comfortable driving that fast at 20 psi. So 20 psi was the most comfortable way you could deal with those corrugations, but I was worried about sort of blowing the tyre off or the tyre getting too hot at 80 k's an hour. So actually put a bit more in. I was running at about 28 psi in the end, which would creep up during the day because of the temperature. That is definitely a harsher ride, but just a bit safer if you're travelling those speeds. So we often saw people that were driving too slowly and probably with too hard tyre pressures, and you could see the suspension just getting absolutely cooked.
Storm to celebrate. Dostum. No, we're in the dust. Just arriving at Chili Beach.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
What are we? 10 and 12?
10 and 12.
So we've got campsites 10 and 12. 10 is left and 12 is straight up. I'll go 10. We'll check them out and then we'll just see what they look like. We might all be able to get on one. So it's a very blustery morning at Chili Beach, so much so I've got the pants on, I've got the shirt on, the butler's got the hoodie on. We're actually going to leave today. We're supposed to stay another day, but it's so windy, it's just quite miserable. Pretty nice spot though. It is a nice spot, it's just a shame the weather's not being that kind to us. So haven't had a great experience at Chili Beach unfortunately, because of the weather, but oh well, that's what happens. Yeah, so once we leave here today, we'll be actually out of the Cape York Peninsula, so still north of Cairns, and then start heading the long journey back home to Sydney. From Chili Beach we were down to 3 vehicles, travelling the 388 kilometres to Hahn River Roadhouse. Driving time between Chili Beach and Hahn River was about 7.5 hours. So the 3 remaining cars had our last night together at Hahn before all making our own separate way back home, with me and the butler starting our long journey back to Sydney. What have you got tonight, butler?
Cooked breakfast. It actually looks kind of, it's alright, it looks pretty good.
So there were 4 cars, then there was 3 cars, then there was 2 cars, and now there is 1 car. So we're now on our own, heading south, still on the PDR, on a paved section now. I think there is a bit more dirt, but not that much more dirt to go. Yeah. Heading towards Laura at the moment, and yeah, we're going to make for Innisfail today. That's where I left my surfboard on the way, so just south of Cairns, about 5.5 hours we think. So yeah, we start the southbound journey back to Sydney. Here we go. So that's pretty much the end of the dirt, we think, the dirt roads. So at this stage is the time to move the uni filter off. And when we compared my air filter to the other guys who haven't got one of these, it was incredible how much this thing catches. So my air filter had basically nothing in it, and the other guys, every few days they were whacking them against the tree and cleaning them out. It's also time for the tyres, to re-inflate the tyres. Now we're back on the road. What are we after? Full, we don't want Do you want one of those? What site do you want? Good?
Oh, look.
Just taking advantage of the hill to get some speed and get lose some of the fuel.
So we're in Innisfail and we got this for $5, a whole watermelon.
It's raining again. The last time I was here it was raining on the way up. Oh, it's so good. Oh my god.
Oh god.
So here's a red hot tip for you for fuel in the Cape. Probably always get fuel when you can, the different roadhouses, the different stops, because they do run out of fuel quite quickly, and we saw other groups where they had to backtrack 100 k's or so to get fuel because what they were reliant on getting fuel would run out. So my advice would be to always top up where you can. The other thing is you're always going to pay a lot for fuel. You're talking, I mean, this is a petrol car, so I didn't really pay that much attention to the diesel, but sort of up to $3 a litre. So I suppose in the grand scheme of things, a trip to the Cape from Sydney is a thousands of dollars trip anyway. So even when you're paying that premium up there, and they have to get it up there, it's not easy to get fuel up that far, that's what you're paying for, you're really only adding a few $100s onto a thousands of dollars trip. So I don't stress too much about that. So other people that are doing it in a petrol car, the other thing to bear in mind is they only have 91 octane. So this car is supposedly a minimum of 95 octane. When I looked in the handbook, it can run on 91, but it's preferred 95. So if you've got a car that can't run on 91 octane, you may struggle in a petrol car. The other thing we had to do, on one occasion, we had to commit the cardinal sin, which was filling up at a service station whilst the big fuel trucks there filling up the Bowsers, which is never a good idea, because you're stirring up, once they're filling those tanks up, they're stirring up all the rubbish in the bottom of the tanks. But we would have run out of fuel if not, so just be mindful of that as well. I reckon we'll be close to 1,000 k's today, hopefully.
Why are you putting a teddy bear?
So we made it as far as Injune, so Innisfail to Injune, big day in the saddle today, wasn't it, Butler? Yeah. How far did we go?
1,152 kilometers.
And how long did that take?
14 hours.
So yeah, a big day today. That's why we're in the motel tonight.
Freeze it. Need tissue.
Is it straight through to Roma? I think it is.
Right.
So it's breakfast in Roma. We've got our last night tonight. And it's pretty cold here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's freezing.
So as you can see, we're in beanies, which sort of red hot tip, I suppose, from the Cape trip. What we found was, it is nice and hot during the daytime, but it's quite cold at night, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking that we would have all the fly sheets open in the tent and we'd be quite hot, but it was actually pretty cold sometimes at night. You are joking. It's raining.
No!
Anyway, so yeah, we'll go back to the weather. Yeah, it wasn't cold, by any shot cold, but it was cooler than I expected. I thought that we would need a fan. We were the only one in the group that didn't have a fan with us. So I was thinking, oh geez, are we going to be cooking in the tent? But I was thinking it'd be all unzipped and the air would go through, but we were actually zipping it right up, and some nights we were even quite cold, weren't we?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not that it's cold weather, but it's cooler than I expected, so just maybe be mindful of that. Although you are in the tropics, it does cool down at night, and especially inland on some of those tracks off the PDR and off Bambergen Road that are higher up and in the middle of the peninsula, they're actually quite cold at night. I was surprised, and even one night I had the beanie on. Yeah. So yeah, another red hot tip for you.
This looks like England.
Yeah, it looks like going to Maine, don't it?
Where's Maine? So, it's our last night. We're at Narrabri, sadly. We're at Narrabri.
New South Wales?
Yeah, we got to New South Wales today. We crossed the border. So we drove about 600 k's today, and it took about 7 hours.
Quite a cruisy day. So we're just enjoying our last happy hour of the trip. This is what we did with our extended family every night in the Cape. So
Today we saw the highlight animal
of the trip. What did we see?
Cockatiels.
Yeah, so cockatiels. Even though we've seen crocodiles and all sorts of other things, we're really happy to see cockatiels because we've got a pet cockatiel zoo. We had one before called Puzzle who got away, so we're quite sort of fond of cockatiels, so it's really cool to see them in the wild. We've never seen them before, so it's awesome, wasn't it? So it's the last night in the rooftop. So we got the rooftop because we were worried about crocodiles up in the Cape, like camping in the Cape, so we thought being up high that'll be better for that sort of situation. But really it wasn't much of a worry, was it really, the crocs? Like, and I think what helped us was going on that crocodile tour on day one, because Bruce, the guy there, he sort of explained about crocodiles and their behaviour, and they're really only comfortable in the water, so you're only ever really in danger if you're in the water or close to the water. So up on the bank, crocs are not comfortable up high, they're vulnerable there, and the Aboriginals used to attack crocodiles when they're out of the water. So crocodiles are actually the least of your worries. What do you think the main problem is up in the Cape then?
100% snakes.
Yeah, definitely.
There are so many snakes in, like, I feel like in the whole group, out of the whole group, we saw a snake at least every day. One went for our campsite under our chairs. Improving.
So between the group, we saw snakes every single day. As the butler said, we actually had a king brown come through our camp while we were sat one evening under our chairs, and 3 times we saw snakes at night.
It's going away, but it is an aggressive snake.
Very aggressive.
That's a brown snake, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, it looks like
It was right under Charlie.
Doesn't
It
matter,
was
baby
under
wanna
his
show you.
chair.
Yeah,
Just make sure it doesn't go in our car.
yeah, we've just got to watch where it goes.
That's a brown. No, it's a brown.
You got to let it go off by itself, but
Yeah.
you've got to watch where it goes.
I'm so happy I'm in a rooftop.
Okay, get back.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Don't muck around with these.
Just make sure it doesn't go in my shitter.
That was under Charlie. That was under him.
Don't go that way.
No, don't go that way, dude. Keep going.
So having the rooftop for that situation was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, the crocs I don't think are a big concern unless you're close to the water or in the water, but we did see everywhere we stopped. If you stopped at any moment and looked in any of the creeks, we would most of the time would see a crocodile, wouldn't we?
He's big.
He is big. There's definitely heaps of them up there. There's no doubt about that. It's full of crocodiles, but it's also full of snakes, which we didn't think about that, and we're not used to seeing snakes in the dark, so that was quite scary actually in situation. Yeah, so here we are on the last night in the rooftop for this trip.
Yep.
Nice way to end the trip. So in all fairness though, this is the first time we've had to have a meal in the car because of the rain on the last day. God, the grass didn't look that long. Someone cut it for me.
Finally, we're home. We're home. Finally, we're home.
So let's take a final look at the trip statistics. So before we get into the trip statistics, I'm going to jump back to a question that I asked back in episode 77. Do you need a highly modified four-wheel drive to get to Cape York? In my view, you don't need a vehicle like that to get to Cape York. In my opinion, most four-wheel drives will get you to Cape York. I think it's more about vehicle reliability than it is modifications. I think the main thing for Cape York really is a good set of tyres. So most four-wheel drives I think will be fine as long as you've got a decent set of tyres. If you've got the highway terrain tyres, then they may get sort of shredded on the PDR and some of the dirt roads. Having a suspension lift as well will also help, but I don't think it's critical. But I think, yeah, it's more about, is the vehicle maintained, is it reliable, more than modifications. In terms of the actual four-wheel drive, and on the tracks that we did, it kind of goes from extreme. So a lot of the old Telegraph track is sort of doable in most four-wheel drives. It's very mogully. I think most four-wheel drives will be okay with it until you get to the creek crossings, where it sort of goes from a medium four-wheel drive track to the extreme end. So, but there are bypasses around it. You can sort of detour around and chicken tracks and all that kind of thing. So in my opinion, based on the tracks that we did, you don't necessarily need a car with a 4-inch lift on 35-inch wheels. You can, I think, do it in a sort of, this is a modified car, but only sort of lightly modified, I suppose. So damage wise, we didn't come away damage free. We've got a dinted door, both of the side steps I've had to straighten back up, and I've got problems with the rear suspension, so it's squeaking and carrying on since that trip. So it definitely didn't come away unscathed, and anybody that has watched any of our previous Cape York episodes, you'll know that we also had to replace the starter motor. So if you are planning your own Cape York trip, it is a trip that you could do solo. There are other vehicles around, but I'd probably recommend not doing that. Just what happened with us, with my starter motor, it was just good having other vehicles and being able to tow me back out. So if you were on your own and in that scenario, you'd be reliant on, unless you could fix it on the track, you'd be reliant on others to then tow you back to civilization. Alright, so let's take a look at the total trip statistics, and I've got some notes in front of me to help me with that. So this is including my solo trip between Sydney and Cairns as well. So if you're interested in that, that's one of the earlier episodes. So total trip duration was 32 days with a total distance travelled of 7,275 kilometres. Driving time to do that was just over 118 hours. To do that, I used 1,232.51 litres of petrol, costing $2,801.49, and that was calculated at 16.94 litres per 100 kilometres. So cheapest fuel for the entire trip was $1.92 per litre for 95 octane, and the most expensive fuel was $3.10 per litre, and that was also 95 octane. So a Cape York trip from Sydney is not a cheap trip, it's not particularly easy, but it is doable in a car like this, so you don't need a highly modified four-wheel drive, and we highly recommend a trip like going up to the Cape. So I want to thank everyone who's tuned in to our Cape York series and our videos in general. We really appreciate it, and if you could leave a comment or a like, or even better subscribe to our channel, that'd be really, really great, because that helps build our channel. And if you want to tune in to the next episode, I'll be back on a solo boat camping trip, so hopefully we'll see you there. And in the meantime, as always, take it easy, brothers, and thanks so much for watching.